Hey guys, welcome back. Day 23. I'm going to start talking about the macronutrients again, but going through some of the more advanced concepts, or at least making sure that we're kind of progressing your knowledge base a little bit. And of course, we're going to start back with protein because that's the most structural macronutrient we consume. And so we want to make sure that we have that stable and meeting your goals. So just yesterday, we talked about this a little bit, and I went over the RDA requirements. I just want to touch on that really quickly again, make sure you got that down. The RDA, recommended daily allowance, is zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now that I think of it, I might have even misstated that because all the grams and kilograms can get jumbled. So if there was an error in yesterday's, just make sure you know it's 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and a kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. So as I mentioned before, somebody about my size, I'm in the 175 range, comes out to about 50 to 60 grams of protein, I think. And that's probably something you could get in one meal if you were going out to eat and had an entree-sized chicken breast or something like that. So remember, the RDA is set up to be something that you can basically just survive on. And when we talked about vegetarianism, some people who eat just no protein at all, you're going to get trace amounts of protein from even the carb sources. And so you can truly survive on even less than the RDA. But I know we're not here to just survive. That's not your goals in viewing this material. So the RDA does get you up to a point that is healthy and acceptable, but there are ranges higher that still give you more. And there have been a lot of studies, a lot of scientists have collaborated, come together even at nutrition conferences and said, you know, that we just have to change that, and it really should be about double. So coming back to me, that would be 120 grams of protein, and I think that's a little bit more in line with what you can physiologically assume is going to help you maintain lean body mass or gain lean body mass. And I think that's it's really a good target. You know, that should be your central bullseye number, is about twice the RDA, which would be 0.8 grams per kilogram is the RDA. So doubling that would be 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram. So I did say, though, that if your goals are physique oriented, you're really trying to gain muscle, you're maybe an athlete and you know you're churning through a lot of performance time on the field or in the gym, you can use more. Studies again show that about 3 times that level is effective. Not necessarily is it a place you have to strive for. For example, I had a young client who is a high school baseball player, very, very good, just signed with a college, and his goal was to gain muscle. Really tall kid, lanky, he would be that classic ectomorph. And his dad brought him to me last summer and said, you know, he really needs to be about 200 pounds because he's 6'4", 6'5", but he's right now about 180. Well, he came into me and he was really about 170. And so now, from the summer to this point in time, 6-7 months later, he's back up to about 200 pounds. And for a high school kid with a schedule going through classes and so forth and basically eating lunches that are provided, I guarantee you he did not get 3 times the RDA. So a lot of that gain came through other anabolic sources, which would be carbohydrates. We're going to talk about that in the next couple days. But I want to show you that it's truly your training that's going to stimulate the best response for muscle gain, strength, performance, those kinds of things. So 2 times the RDA would definitely be enough, but if you can push yourself up to 3 times that level, I think you'd be a little bit happier with your results. You're going to know you're buffering against any weaknesses in your diet as far as protein goes and so forth. So that's just reviewing the quantity. We're going to spend a little time talking about quality, and a lot of people talk about protein powder supplements or different types of animal protein and wondering what's better. And we used to talk about biological value. That was a big way we rated protein about 10, 15, even 20 years ago. Then came the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, and now there's even another one coming out that calculates even a little bit more things like the recycling of amino acids in your body. So we're getting more sophisticated at how we can rank proteins, but it all points to the same information we've already known, which is the quality or the purity of the protein is where you're going to get increased quality. And it's really easy to remember if you just think of it in terms of carbohydrates. We know, for example, a high glycemic carbohydrate, something very sugary, hits your bloodstream, gets absorbed instantly, so you get a maximum response. That might not be your goal for hunger, satiety, things like that, but just to show you that a, quote, pure sugar would get you that most rapid response. And the reason is you don't have a lot of fiber or complexity that you have to digest through to release that glucose or those polysaccharides turning into monosaccharides and disaccharides. So protein is no different. You have complex meat sources, for example, beef, chicken, and so forth, and to digest those meat fibers to get the amino acids takes time. There's some waste in that process, so the value is a little bit lower. That doesn't mean that those are inferior by any means, and you should avoid them. That's kind of the standard. You're going to have some animal protein. Something like egg whites and so forth, again, that's a little bit easier to digest, and so you're going to get a little bit more of a value. Matter of fact, the egg or the egg white was kind of the gold standard when they first came out with biological value. Meat fiber was calculated at a certain range, like in the 77-ish, 75, 70 range, and then all of a sudden the egg showed up in testing, and they decided that was going to be the 100. So we would go from kind of 0 to 100 in protein quality. But then protein powders came into the market, and they knocked everything out of the atmosphere because they're just so much simpler. They get digested, and like that high glycemic carb, get right into your bloodstream much faster. So all of a sudden they had to make room on those scales for whey protein isolate up into the 120, 130, 150 ranges. And so that kind of just blew that out of the water, and so they came out with that protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. And on we go. We're still getting more and more data on how to just validate everything that we consume. So here's what you need to know. It's not all about just having the highest or fastest value, but timing and why you're taking those. Again, always have a reason for what you're doing. So there are times through the day when you actually want a slower digesting protein. That's where something like a casein, or which is a heavier molecular weight protein powder, or even some of the things people talk about having cottage cheese before bed or something because it's high in casein and so forth. Other people might do egg white, something like that. And that's simply because you have a longer term digestion process, and so it'll stick with you longer. Those amino acids will be hitting your bloodstream longer. And throughout a night of fasting, people have supposed that that would be the best avenue. And it's possible. Some new research, again, is coming out. I talked about some of the longer fasting type methods where you fast for 16 hours and so forth. Who knows? We might find out that eating around the clock with protein is not necessarily the best thing to do. Matter of fact, some preliminary studies have shown we need some time without protein so that we don't get just so adapted to it. Just like any drug in the body, the more you get, the more adaptive you are, and the more it takes for you to get a response. So sometimes having those fasting periods, even with protein, is helpful. So all of that just to say that just because something is showing up higher on a biological value scale doesn't necessarily mean that's the best. Matter of fact, some of these other testing procedures are showing the heavier molecular weight proteins could be your best bet. So I'm all about making sure that you have the right tool for the right job. So I would say the isolates or the protein powder, something that you want in there fast, would be pre-workout, post-workout, maybe for convenience, throw in a shake here and there. But consider your normal protein intake just as much about quantity still, and getting those sources when you need it. And you've got the information on meal timing already about pre-workout and post-workout being important spots. So that's what I would focus on. Maybe some of this other information on quality and speed is helpful, but mainly just to help you with strategic timing. So for the next couple days, guys, we're going to finish up this little segment with carbs and fat.